by the age of 14, 91% of kids have cell phones, have smartphones. Yesterday, Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Meta, or AKA Facebook, went to Capitol Hill to talk about all sorts of things. And he was really more or less grilled. Now, look, when it comes to, I think this is important. For me, this is a very important topic. I have kids who are entering the age where social media is a very important thing. Now, before we got started, Joe and I were talking about this, and we were talking about the effects that social media has specifically on young girls and the detrimental effects that it has on young women, because they are seeing, there's a number of reasons, but just to put it as vanilla as possible, you have young girls who are looking at other people's lives and the best portions of their life that is literally a filter of their life with a filter on that. So they're looking at these things and they're saying, why isn't my life that good? And ultimately, that drives a bunch of depression, right? Girls develop, they get depressed, they get upset, they develop all sorts of anxiety from things that they don't have, especially with FOMO, fear of missing out, and why am I not there? And I understand that, right? Like there's always this, man, I wish I had this, especially when you're in this younger age where you see all your friends doing these things. And Joe, you were talking specifically about a study that you saw on this as well.
Yeah, in 2022, I think is when it came out. I have one pulled up from, I'm sure there's more at this point, but have one pulled up on PubMed. Time spent on social media and risk of depression in adolescence, a dose-response meta-analysis is just one of them. And I mean, they even found out that Meta themselves has done studies and know that it's linked, time directly spent on social media, which they actually have an acronym for, TSSM, directly linked, correlation with depression. And especially in adolescence. And they know this and they don't care.
Right. So leads us to Mark Zuckerberg on the stand yesterday. And you'll see on this clip that he says that as I said, truly despicable lies from Mark Zuckerberg. Here we go.
With so much of our lives spent on mobile devices and social media, it's important to look into the effects on teen mental health and well-being. I take this very seriously. Mental health is a complex issue, and the existing body of scientific work has not shown a causal link between using social media and young people having worse mental health outcomes.
That's a bold-faced lie.
It is a straight fucking lie. And a lot of people have pointed out he sounds a lot like the cigarette lobbies from the 80s when they're like, do cigarettes cause cancer? And they're like, absolutely not. Meow. As they roll in their money, right? There's very much just these bold-faced lies when it comes to this, based off studies. And they continued to be grilled. This is Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina coming in with a pretty bold statement, which, when you listen to the people in the background after he says this, usually there's not a whole lot of cheering in these sessions, but just go take a listen to this really fast.
Mr. Zuckerberg, you and the companies before us, I know you don't mean it to be so, but you have blood on your hands. You have a product. You have a product that's killing people.
As people clap and cheer for this.
That was spicy.
It was spicy. And to hear people clapping and understanding that, yeah, there's absolutely, issues here. And I think all this is really great. It's really great that he's getting raked over the coals with this. And I think this is one of the topics that in society it's not addressed enough, right? I've said this before many, many times. I think that just as we look back on cigarettes in the 50s, doctors were like, hey, smoke. It's good for you. There's nothing wrong with this. Like, it was so ass backwards. I think that in 20, 30, 40 years, we're going to do the exact same thing with social media. And we're going to say there's going to be bans associated with it because we're going to see the long-term negative effects. You won't have cancer, but you'll have other negative effects associated with social media. And as somebody who's literally spent my entire professional career on social media, I've seen the negative aspects to it. And that's why I'm so passionate about not giving that access to my kids. They continue. This is, I don't know who this lady is, but this was really interesting as they talked about the monetary value, the lifetime monetary value of a teenager to Facebook. Have you heard this before? How much they value a user on their website?
I haven't actually heard of the monetary value of it.
Well, you're about to find out how much they value.
We have just had, Senator Blumenthal and I, of course, have had some internal documents and emails that have come our way. One of the things that really concerned me is that you referred to your young users in terms of their lifetime value of it being roughly $270 per teenager. And each of you should be looking at these kids. Their T-shirts they're wearing today say, I'm worth more than $270. We've got some standing up in those T-shirts.
As Zuckerberg slowly turns, so $270.
It's not a lot.
No, not a lot at all. But if you have that value on somebody, what's to prevent you from spending $200 or $150 for that customer acquisition? If you know you're going to profit $120 over the lifetime of the user, why not spend that money, bring them in? It's a profit game at that point. So I don't know, Blaz, I would love to hear your thoughts. You're obviously a younger generation than me. I think that's one of the fun variables about this show, right? You see things different, and you've lived kind of I would say a sheltered life. There's a lot of you didn't even know what BBC meant, right? But I love that perspective. I love that. I don't know. Love to hear your thoughts on this.
I think social media is very detrimental to society, actually. And I've made a post on my private Instagram years ago about it, how people always assume that everyone's living their best life. I can remember exactly for myself, I had posted these photos from somewhere where I was, and one of my best friends was like, oh my God, I want your life. And meanwhile, right before she called me on the phone to say all this, I was crying in tears of pain from an injury or whatever. And I'm like, you think that's my life 24/7. So these people are just so completely hoodwinked that what you see on Instagram, what you see on Twitter is real, and it's not. It's a small, very, very small percentage of what your life actually consists of. No one's going to go and post photos. I mean, some people do for attention, of themselves crying and go, this is the worst thing ever. Or their dog died, things like that. It's not real. So everyone thinks that everything is just so fake and designed to be perfect, and it's just curated. It's all it is. It's bullshit. It's not real.
Joe?
There's also not just that, which I agree with you, Blabs, I saw a picture of an apple with a bite on it facing a mirror, and it's the mirror is social media, and you're not seeing the apple that's rotten on the other side. So you'll never know the full picture, and you're always pretending or thinking that the apple's perfect. But besides that element, there's also the psychological impact of, especially with kids, of being reliant on likes and follows. And, I'll tell you, some of my happiest years in life, I did post-college. I decided to just get off of social media for about 3 or 4 years. It was the happiest years of my life. I don't need to know. I don't need to care. If someone thinks that my vacation was cool, I don't care. I enjoyed it. I'm living it. Living in the real world 100%, has value as well.
As Jim says, the dopamine hit is real, and infinite scroll just keeps it going over and over and over again, 100%. And as pointed out, this is just another form of bullying, right? And you see that on social media all the time. That is a new threat that I didn't have to deal with growing up at all. And it goes back to, man, that dopamine hit is dangerous. And we have to walk a very, very thin tightrope on this show, where YouTube is a form of social media, right? It is a video platform, but at its core, YouTube is social media. So we have to balance the idea of likes, having those goals. We have a goal of 500, right? Every single show. That helps with the algorithm. So why is it important for the algorithm to help us? So the show can continue to grow and people can find the show, and discoverability is very important for the show. so we can talk about things that necessarily YouTube doesn't want to be talked about. Things like this, right? So there's this balance that we have to go. Like, we don't have a TikTok. That's a moral thing for us. TikTok would be massive for the show. Like, I actually think having a TikTok would help explode our show. But we haven't pulled that trigger yet. And I'm not saying that we won't. I'm saying that that's something that we've had to go back and forth on. I don't want TikTok to be on my PC or my phone. I don't want it to be on Blab. But if we could work with somebody who is willing to take that risk, then possibly, and take those clips and things like that and pass them around, because this discoverability on TikTok is something that can't be ignored. So it goes back to that tightrope. And but there's a difference between having a business on social media and being a parent on social media. And that's something that I personally deal with on a day-to-day basis, especially as I saw this note that I think it was by the age of 14, 91% of kids have cell phones, have smartphones. That's insane to me. That is absolutely insane. And that those smartphones all have Instagram, they all have TikTok, they all have X, they all have all these social media things. And it's rough, man. It's definitely a crazy situation. So, yeah, I guess we'll kind of close it with that. Joe, you got anything before we wrap on that topic?
No, I agree with you on that with social media. And I don't have any kids, but I have a bunch of nieces and nephews. And I'm happy to say the oldest is 12. And, they do have iPads. They play games, Roblox, whatever. But I'm happy to say that none of the kids are on social media. And I hope that stays that way. Keeps them safer.
So my phone, I have an iPhone X, which is like old at this point. I think they're going to like 16. So I'm like 5-6 years old. And I'm just going to use this until it breaks. And I actually posted it out. I want to get a dumb phone on social media. Like, that's the idea. But I'm not quite there yet to getting. I think as soon as my phone is done, and it just kind of breaks or whatever, that's when I'll make that jump.
You're going to jump over to Jitterbug?
I saw that. Jitterbug looks pretty freaking cool. I'm not going to lie. Let's go.